Ireland is a small island on the western edge of Europe, roughly the size of the state of Indiana. It has been lived in for around 9,000 years, and almost nothing about it makes sense. It has a national symbol that is a musical instrument, and a beer company owns a better version of it. It has a language with no word for yes and no word for no. It has lakes that vanish. It has a tomb older than the pyramids of Giza. It has a motorway that bends because of ferries. And it is the only country in Europe that has fewer people living in it today than it had in 1841. These are 25 facts about Ireland that sound completely made up, and every single one of them is real. Number 1 is the one that stops people cold. Because once you have heard it, you cannot look at the country the same way again. This is Dust and Stories. Subscribe, because the smallest countries always turn out to have the strangest histories. Number 25. Ireland's longest place name is Muckanaghaddadowhowlia in County Galway. 22 letters. In Irish it is Muicheanach Eidir da Shaile, and it means the pig marsh between two saltwaters. An entire sentence of description compressed into one word for a townland most people in Ireland have never heard of. Number 24. Sean's Bar in Athlone, County Westmeath, is recognised as the oldest pub in Ireland, and it claims to be the oldest in the world, with a founding date of around the year 900. During renovations, sections of wall made of wattle and wicker were uncovered, along with old coins, and they are now in the National Museum. The floor slopes down towards the Shannon, so that when the river floods, the water runs back out again. Number 23. The White House was designed by an Irishman. James Hoban was born near Callan in County Kilkenny around 1755, trained in Dublin, emigrated to America after the Revolution, and won the 1792 competition to design the President's House. When the British burned it in 1814, Hoban was brought back to rebuild it. Number 22. Dracula was written by a Dubliner who never went anywhere near Transylvania. Bram Stoker was born in Clontarf in 1847 and worked for years as a theatre manager in London. He built Transylvania entirely out of library research, travel books and maps. He never visited Eastern Europe in his life. Number 21. Ireland has won the Eurovision Song Contest 7 times. And in 1992, 93 and 94 it won 3 years running. No other country has ever won 3 in a row. Winning is expensive because the winner hosts the following year, and by the mid-90s there was genuine public commentary in Ireland about whether the country could afford to keep being this good at it. Number 20. In 1759, Arthur Guinness signed a lease on a disused brewery at St James's Gate in Dublin. The lease ran for 9,000 years at £45 a year. He was 34 years old, and he had just committed his descendants to a rent payable until the year 10,759. The company later bought the land outright, which makes the lease a historical curiosity rather than a live bill, but the document is real and it is on display. Number 19. Guinness is not black. Hold a glass up to a strong light and look at the edge. It is a very dark ruby red. The colour comes from roasted barley, and the company will tell you this itself. An entire national image is built on a colour the drink does not actually have. Number 18. The Roman Empire never invaded Ireland. Rome took Britain, pushed north into Scotland, built 2 walls and stopped. Ireland was known, traded with and written about by Roman geographers, and there is Roman material in Irish coastal sites. But no legion ever came, no province was ever declared, and Ireland's Iron Age simply continued, uninterrupted, while the rest of Western Europe was being reorganised. Number 17. St. Patrick was not Irish. He was Romano-British, from somewhere in Western Britain, and he tells the story himself in his own writing. He was taken by Irish raiders at about 16, enslaved, and spent 6 years herding animals before escaping home. He came back later, voluntarily, to the country that had kidnapped him. Number 16. St. Patrick's colour was blue. The shade known as St. Patrick's blue was the one used for the Order of St. Patrick in the 1780s, and blue was the colour associated with Ireland in heraldry long before green was. Green took over with the rise of Irish nationalism, and it took over so thoroughly that the older colour now sounds like a mistake. Number 15. Halloween is Irish. It comes from Samhain, the festival marking the end of the harvest and the beginning of winter, when the boundary between this world and the other one was believed to thin. Turnips were carved into lanterns long before pumpkins, and the pumpkin only appeared once Irish emigrants reached America and found a bigger, softer vegetable. Number 14. Ireland has no native snakes, and St. Patrick did not drive them out, because there were never any there. When the ice retreated at the end of the last glaciation, Ireland was cut off by rising sea levels before snakes had a chance to recolonise from continental Europe. Britain got 3 species, Ireland got none. The story is a metaphor that hardened into a fact. Number 13. Ireland is the only country in the world whose national emblem is a musical instrument, not an animal, not a plant, not a bird, a harp. And there is a complication. Guinness registered the harp as a trademark in 1876. When the Irish Free State came to adopt the same instrument as the state emblem in 1922, the brewery already owned the obvious version, so the state's harp faces the other way. The country had to turn its own national symbol around because a stout company got there first. Number 12. Dublin has 2 completely different names, and then they describe 2 different places. Dublin comes from Dublin, the Black Pool, a tidal pool where the Vikings moored. Baile Atha Cleath, the Irish name still used today, means the town of the hurdled ford, a crossing point upriver. They were 2 separate settlements. The city grew until it swallowed both, and it has been answering to both ever since. Number 11. The Irish language has no word for yes and no word for no. You cannot answer a question with either. You answer by repeating the verb. Asked whether you went, you reply I went, or I did not go. Asked whether you understand, you reply I understand. Every answer commits you to the whole sentence. There is no way to just agree. Number 10. Ireland's national animal is the Irish hare, and it has been on the island longer than almost anything else alive. Remains found in Castlebook Cave in County Cork have been dated to roughly 28,000 years ago, which puts the hare in Ireland before the peak of the last ice age. It survived conditions that emptied the rest of the island of nearly everything. Number 9. Ireland has lakes that disappear. They're called turlows, and they're almost unique to Ireland. The limestone country of Galway, Clare, Mayo and Roscommon is so riddled with cracks and channels that water rises up through the ground in winter, fills a hollow and forms a lake. In summer, it drains away downwards and the lake becomes a field again. Cattle graze in summer on ground that was under several metres of water in February. Number 8. 12 kilometres off the coast of Kerry in the open Atlantic, there is a rock with a monastery on it. Monks settled Skellig Michael somewhere around the 6th to 8th century, cut over 600 steps into the rock by hand, and lived in stone beehive huts on a ledge 700 feet above the sea. They stayed for roughly 600 years on a crag with no shelter, no soil worth the name, and no reliable way off it in bad weather. Number 7. Under the bogs of North Mayo, there is a Stone Age farming landscape. The Side fields are the most extensive Neolithic field system known anywhere, generally dated to around 5,500 years ago. Stone walls, enclosures and dwellings laid out in an organised pattern across thousands of acres, and then slowly buried as the climate turned wetter and the bog grew over the top of everything. A farming community planned that landscape and the bog sealed it like a lid. Number 6. Newgrange in County Meath was built around 3,200 years before Christ. That makes it older than the pyramids of Giza and older than the stone circle at Stonehenge. And it is not just old, it is engineered. There is a slot above the entrance, a roof box, aligned so that on the morning around the winter solstice, and only then, the rising sun drives a beam of light down 19 metres of passage and onto the floor of the chamber at the back. 5,000 years later, it still works. Number 5. Ireland used to have a deer the size of a horse. The giant deer, usually called the Irish elk, stood around 2 metres at the shoulder and carried antlers spanning up to 3.5 metres. The finest complete specimens anywhere have come out of Irish bogs and lake beds, which is why the animal is named after a country it was not confined to. The last of them in Ireland died out around 11,000 years ago. Number 4. There are somewhere in the region of 30,000 ring forts scattered across Ireland, circular earthworks from the early medieval period. And an extraordinary number of them are still standing because people would not touch them. They are known as fairy forts, and the belief that interfering with one brings misfortune has outlasted almost every other piece of folk practice on the island. In 1999, plans for a bypass in County Clare were altered to spare a single hawthorn bush at Latoon, after the folklorist Eddie Lenihan warned publicly that it was a meeting point for fairies. The story went around the world. The road went around the bush. Number 3. Hurling may be the oldest field game on earth. It appears in the Tan Bo Cuilinge, the great Irish epic where the boy Cú Chulainn plays with a hurley and a ball and uses both as weapons. The written versions of that story are over 1,000 years old, and the tradition behind it is reckoned at 3,000. It is still played at ferocious speed by amateurs for county pride in front of 80,000 people. Number 2. In 2003, turf cutters in County Offaly uncovered a body in the bog at Croghan Hill. Old Croghan man had been in there for well over 2,000 years. He was young, he was extraordinarily tall, an estimated 6 feet 6. His fingernails were manicured, and analysis of his last meal suggested a diet rich enough to mark him out as somebody important. He had also been killed with enormous deliberation. He was stabbed, cut, and dismembered, and his nipples had been sliced. That last detail is the one the National Museum of Ireland has built an interpretation around. In early Irish kingship, sucking a king's nipples was a gesture of submission. Cutting them made a man permanently ineligible to rule, which suggests this was not simply a killing. It was the unmaking of a king. Number 1. In 1841, the census counted around 8.2 million people living on the island of Ireland. Then came the famine. 1 million or so died. 1 million or more emigrated. And the emigration did not stop when the famine did. It continued decade after decade for over a century. Ireland today, north and south together, holds somewhere around 7 million people. Nearly 200 years later, the country still has not got back to where it was. Ireland is the only country in Europe of which that is true. Every other nation on the continent went through wars, famines, plagues, and mass immigration of its own, and grew anyway. Ireland is the single exception. and the people are not gone. They are somewhere else. The number of people around the world who claim Irish descent is commonly put at around 70 million, roughly 10 times the population of the island itself. There is a version of Ireland that never happened, full of the descendants of everybody who left. It would be the size of a large European country. Instead, it is scattered across Boston, Liverpool, Glasgow, New York, Sydney, and Toronto. And it comes back once a generation looking for a townland. 25 facts, a pig marsh with a 22-letter name, a pub with a sloping floor, a Kilkenny man's design on Pennsylvania Avenue, a vampire invented in a Dublin library, a 9,000-year lease, a stout that is secretly red, an empire that never came, a saint who was kidnapped, a colour that changed, a festival that emigrated, snakes that never existed, a harp facing the wrong way, a city with 2 names, a language with no yes, a hair older than the ice, a lake that drains, a monastery on a crag, a farm under a bog, a tomb that catches the sun, a deer the size of a horse, a road that bends for ferries, a game 3,000 years old, a murdered king in the peat, and a country still counting back to 1841. If any of those made you stop and check, subscribe to Dust and Stories. We go looking for the places the map forgot and the histories nobody bothered to tell you. Like the video. Drop a comment telling us which one you had to look up. And thank you for watching. We will see you in the next one.